Paramount City Council meeting is now called to order. At this time, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance led by Vice Mayor Tom Hansen and the invocation by Deacon Candidate Ezekiel Martinez from Our Lady of the Rosary Church. Please stand.
Please join me in the pledge to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Now, if I may ask everybody to join me, let's close our eyes for a second and place ourselves in the presence of God. Heavenly Father, we praise you, we worship you, we glorify you, Lord. Who else like you? There is none. Father, we thank you for all the blessings that we have received today. And we also thank you for gathering us here tonight. We ask that you send the Holy Spirit upon us so that this Holy Spirit guides us. He guides us in everything that we are to talk about, guides us in all the decisions that we're about to make, and also guide us in all the actions that we need to take. We ask you, Father, to bless our mayor, our council members, our city manager, and all the staff, because it is through their works that you bless this great city. It is through their service that you benefit the entrepreneurs of the city, the visitors of the city, the businesses of the city, and above all, the residents of the city. Father, we ask this all in the name of Jesus Christ, your Son, who lives and reigns with you in unity with the Holy Spirit, one God forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Roll call of council members, please.
Councilmember Guillen,
Here.
Councilmember Hoffmeyer,
Here.
Councilmember Lemons,
Here.
Vice Mayor Hansen,
Here.
Mayor Martinez.
Here. At this time, I'll ask my colleagues to please join me at the podium. Tonight, we are making presentations to some special members of the Paramount community. At this time, if Planning Commissioner Holly Enriquez is present, please come forward. There she is. Paramount has 5 city commissions. The members of these commissions serve as advisors to the City Council on a variety of issues that we face. Tonight, we thank Holly for her time spent on the Planning Commission. We appreciate her commitment and assistance in this very important area of municipal government. And we have this plaque to mark this service. So at this time, we thank you so much, Holly, for your service. Paramount has a reputation for being very conservative financially. That's a good thing. The City Council and our staff work hard to manage the city's money responsibly. We maintain balanced budgets year after year and keep a healthy reserve of funds to protect our operations. To explain this financial profile, our finance department produces a comprehensive annual financial report. This is required by state law. Our reports, however, go over and above the basic requirements. Due to their excellence, precision, and professionalism, these reports have been given awards for over 3 decades by the Government Finance Officers Association. This year, our 2017 report has earned the award once again. Our finance department is to be praised for their ongoing remarkable work. With us tonight from the association is Renita Dukes, and audit manager with the accounting firm of Frenick, Trine, Day and Company. Would you please join us? And any members of our finance department, please come up as well. Mystic, would you like to say a few words?
Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to be here this evening. I had the pleasure of conducting the audit for the City of Paramount for fiscal year 2018, and I will be presenting that information. Do I do it at this time? Okay. At a later time, but I just want to say that I've worked with the finance department for a couple of years, and I've noticed that the department has always acted with integrity. They've always been very helpful, and the staff and Karina and Clyde's team are very knowledgeable in the accounting concepts and what's required to go into the CAFR that's presently being presented for award this evening. So it's my pleasure to say that, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
At this time, I would like to ask any members of the finance department to please come forward for a photo. Halloween, Veterans Day, and Seniors Thanksgiving. The great Muhammad Ali once said, "Service to others is the rent you pay for your room here on earth." In Paramount, we have many people who serve others in our community by giving their time as volunteers. One of the ways these generous people give back is by helping at the public events the city hosts throughout the year. These activities are designed to entertain, educate, and honor, and provide a chance for our community to come together. They also take a great amount of time and energy to produce. While city staff and various departments plan and direct each event, our great volunteers and sometimes our generous donors make them all successful and give them a sense of community kinship. The holiday season, beginning with Halloween, is our busiest time of year. And this year, we have a lot of folks to thank for their dedicated support. Tonight, we are recognizing those who helped with the Halloween Festival, the Veterans Day celebration, and the Senior Thanksgiving Luncheon. I'm going to introduce all of these groups, then anyone in the audience can come up for a photo. Halloween always attracts thousands of residents and friends. For the past 2 years, we have added to the Haunted Maze, which is a fundraiser for the PEP College scholarships. The volunteers who set up and staffed a variety of game booths handed out candy all night long and made sure that the maze was such a scary fun were all from Paramount High School. They are the cheer team and advisor Lourdes Aguayo, JROTC and advisor Colonel Robert Guild, the Avid Club with advisor Frank Bignami, the Interact Club with advisor Megan Hernandez, the Leo Club and advisor Joe Lopez, and the soccer team coach Hector Rodriguez. Let's give them a round of applause. This year, our Veterans Day breakfast and fare was brand new and paid respect to Paramount residents who have served in the military. There was a delicious meal along with displays and entertainment in the park. We thank the Corsairs Club with advisor Andrea Guerrero, and again the cheer team, the Leo Club, and the JROTC for serving the breakfast. The JROTC also added their expertise by doing a pass-in review and performing with their drill team. A hearty thank you also goes to our local IHOP restaurant and manager, Miriam Torres, for donating the food. Please give them a round of applause. Then it was time for our 38th annual Thanksgiving gathering for all of our seniors. It was another large crowd full of people enjoying themselves with dancing, visiting, and having a good meal. Once again, the students in the Coursiers Club were the servers. Thanks are due to AppleCare for their substantial financial contribution of $4,000 to Thanksgiving. Let's show them our appreciation. As you can see, there are many people who are committed to doing the right thing and promoting goodwill in our Paramount community. You all have a profound gratitude, and we'd like to take a photo with all of you if you're present. Please come forward.
Oh, that shirt would have been a clue.
We'll take, maybe have this taller gentleman on the very top steps on the sides. And then that second step right here, I'm going to bring a couple of you up a little bit.
Wait from Leah's?
And then we're going to turn 45 degrees towards the center. So towards the center this way, towards the center this way. I'm going to switch you.
Please. You said that after this meeting. Okie dokie. Are there any public comments, Mr. Moreno?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we do not have any city council public comment updates from the last meetings, but we do have 3 comment cards for this meeting. The first one is from our librarian, Ms. Andrea Crow, and she'd like to address the council about library programs. Ms. Crow?
Evening, Mayor Martinez, council members in the city of Paramount. Paramount Library has 2 special events this month. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, adults are invited to create handmade greeting cards that light up. On Thursday, December 27th at 2 p.m., MakeMo invites teens ages 12 to 18 to capture the unseen world with a combination of microscopes, fascinating slides, and mobile phones. I hope you join us at one of these special events. Thank you.
Thank you, Adriana.
Our next speaker card is from Mr. Freddie Garcia. He'd like to address the council about traffic. Mr. Garcia? Mr. Garcia in the audience still?
Mr. Garcia, Freddie Garcia.
He may have left. Okay. Our next speaker then is Mr. Artie Davari. He wants to address the council regarding a recap of the air pollution meeting.
Push the button.
There we go. Hello? Excellent. All right, good evening, everyone. Just a quick recap on what happened on, I believe it was Saturday. So I went to the meeting and 3 concerns came up to me, all that I kind of already had. One was when I was going and learning about chromium-6 and I spoke to some of my environmentalist friends, they were very negative to AQMD. And I took them as a grain of salt. They were tree huggers and liberals, and I let it go. And I came into that meeting with an open mind. But unfortunately, my concerns were addressed there, because one of the main questions was, how many times can Aniplex violate and get shut down till they are allowed to open again? And to my shock, their answer was, I don't know. I don't understand how you come to that meeting and not have an answer, because I don't know, to me, translates to as many times as they want. So it does bring those concerns that my environmentalist friends said, that it seems like AQMD, they bark like DMX, but they bite like Lassie when it comes to actually doing something. Second concern was the person that they brought in, the environmentalist, that it was supposedly watchdogging Aniplex for what they were doing. It was a joke. She was clearly bought and paid for. She tried to sell me goods, and I wasn't buying it. She was trying to tell me that Aniplex was doing everything that they could to make it safe and friendly and clean up their act, but they just got shut down for not cleaning their roof. How can you tell me that they are committed to cleaning up what they were doing and be shut down 6 times since 2016? They're not committed to doing that. She was just trying to calm everyone down, but the truth of the matter was that they're not. Because someone that's doing these things would not be violating it 6 times over and over again, and cleaning, I don't know how you clean a roof necessarily, but that seems very simple. So for them violating that, seems that they're not fully committed. Third, was the attitude of Aniplex. They brought in some of their workers, and they were fighting with the people of Paramount. I believe a gentleman, first of all, it's ridiculous for them to say, oh, we're not a millionaire company, so somehow that it's okay now to pollute. So it doesn't matter to me if you're a $1 billion company, a $1 trillion company, or a dollar company. You're violating it. And if you're not making all this money, you really need to close down. And then, on top of that, the guy's attitude was, how many times do you clean your roof? Which is crazy, because there's no chromium-6 on my roof. So I just want to tell people who are listening and the public, it's time to get serious. If you're waiting on your government to come clean this up, it's a waste of time. Please, we need to boycott whoever Aniplex is selling their goods to. Please boycott whatever they're doing. Let's get serious. Let's make some noise on the internet. And that's the only way things are going to stop, when their pocketbooks get affected.
Thank you, Mr. DeVour.
Thank you very much.
That's it, Madam Mayor.
Okay. Consent calendar, please.
Make motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call,
I
please.
need to remove myself from number 4. I wasn't here for those dates, so I need to remove myself from that one and vote on the others.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve 5 and 6. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Guillen,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons,
Yes, with the exception of the minutes for November 20th. I wasn't present.
Vice Mayor Hanson,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. I'll make a motion to approve item 4.
Councilmember, oh, sorry,
Second?
roll call. Councilmember Gian.
I'm abstaining, I wasn't here.
Okay, Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons.
Abstaining on the 20th, yes.
Vice Mayor Hanson.
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. Item 7, resolution number 18035. May I have a staff report, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Council. At the November 6th City Council meeting, we reviewed proposed changes to the code that would affect how we determine whether or not a neighborhood qualifies for resident permit parking. Earlier on the consent calendar that you just approved, you adopted the ordinance that allows you to develop guidelines through a resolution, which we're about to hear tonight. These guidelines that the council reviewed back in November were studied for several months by staff as well as the Public Safety Commission, and also involved input from residents. At November's meeting, the council requested us to go back to come up with a few changes that would simplify the guidelines a bit more, and also provide more staff assistance in the guidelines to a person that's requesting the resident permit parking. So we feel that we've fulfilled these requests for you with our latest versions. Before I turn things over to Adriana Lopez, I also want to mention that the council at the meeting had also asked us to review our current practice for distributing the permits. So specifically, the council wanted us to look at possibly revising the number of permits that we give out to residents once their neighborhood has been approved for permit parking. As you may know, our current practice has been in place since the 1980s. So this is going to require us to do a little bit more work on that part of it. So we plan to review this item with the Public Safety Commission in the upcoming months, and we hope to have that ready for your review in spring of next year. So with that, I will turn it over to our Public Safety Director, Adriana Lopez, to handle the item. Adriana?
Yes, thank you, John. Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. This evening, like John mentioned, I will be presenting Resolution 18035, which establishes guidelines and procedures for neighborhood permit parking. The proposed guidelines are designed to mitigate parking shortages in the city of Paramat and also establish a standard application process. On November 6th, the public safety staff presented guidelines to establish neighborhood resident permit parking to the city council. And after reviewing the proposed guidelines, the council directed staff to create revisions that would make the initial process more applicant-friendly. In response, staff has revised the guidelines. So what we would do is we would make sure that the applicant would be aware of these guidelines, which basically outlines that the proposed area must consist of primarily single-family residents and also duplexes. And neighborhood permit parking areas will consist of a group of street segments designated by the Public Safety Director based on the characteristics of the street segments. The applicant will also be the point of contact for all matters, and public safety staff will be informing the applicant of the entire process. All requirements in each phase must be satisfied before moving on to the next phase in the eligibility process. So we would go on to the next phase, which would be the initial screening process. Here, public safety staff would meet with the applicant and provide the following items: a map of the proposed area with the addresses, also a total count of the households within the proposed area, and also a petition form, which will need to contain 75% of the signatures from the property owners or residents in the proposed area. This gives you an overview of the criteria. Once again, it would be the initial screening process. Then we would go into the eligibility process. In the eligibility process, we have 5 phases, and I'll go through each phase. So what public safety staff would do would, once we receive the petition that would meet the 75% threshold of residents and property owners, public safety staff would mail out hard copies of the voter survey in the proposed area. Once we received at least 75% of these surveys, once again, this would be the property owner who would vote on this, then we would move on to phase 6, Once again, we would have to receive 75% of yes votes to move on to the next phase. Phase 2, once again, public safety staff would identify alternatives to public parking, such as the following. Are people using their driveways for parking? Are they using their garage for parking? And then staff would identify any inoperable vehicles and deal with those accordingly. If at this point, staff determines that there is substantial amount of public parking, then the city would not continue to the next phase, and we would let the applicant know. Phase 3, public safety staff would conduct a study to determine the level of parking congestion and parked vehicles registered outside of the proposed area. So looking at this, we would be looking at, is there a actual problem on the street? So there would have to be 75% of on-street parking must be occupied during the time that the applicant says that there's a problem. Out of that 75% threshold, a minimum of 25% of on-street parking should be registered to vehicles outside of the proposed area. Phase 4, we would take these results to the Public Safety Commission for review, and depending on what the recommendation is, then we would take it to the City Council for approval or denial. And then Phase 5 would be the City Council review. This is where we would, public safety staff would present the results with the Public Safety Commissions, and if the council approves, then we would be directed to initiate the distribution process of the neighborhood permit parking within the proposed area. And as John mentioned, we would come back with the distribution process at a later date. We feel that there are potential benefits to creating a criteria. We feel that it's aligned with the parking needs of our community, and it would also assist us with reducing the amount of petitions that we received for single streets, and also for neighborhoods that really don't require this. We will also reduce the permit parking to only streets that are impacted the most. And also, it would provide staff with an objective and measurable standards to grant or deny permit parking. It is recommended the City Council adopt resolution number 18035, and if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for Adriana?
I have a couple questions. In your initial process, once again, this is what had me stumped the last time. It says 75% of residents / property owners. So are you saying that property owned, is that what you're saying? Not the residents, but the property owners?
No, this is one of the changes or the revisions that we made based on your recommendations.
Can we go back to that initial screen where it says 75% residents / property owners?
I believe it's right here at the last
Okay.
one, the petition form.
Okay.
So the petition form would allow the applicant to collect signatures from residents as well as property owners. So
Okay,
it
as
should
well
be
as,
and
okay.
or. So this would allow us to develop a threshold if the residents that live in that area would like to move further on.
Okay, and so how do you determine, this was my question last time, how do you determine the whole number? How do you determine what 75% is if you don't know what the whole number is? So when you say residents or property owners, how do you know you have an actual picture of how many people live in a household, how many owners there are that own a residence? How are you getting that whole number?
Okay, so one of the revisions that we made was specifically to this area. So here, when we would have an applicant express interest, we, the staff, would sit down with them and look at the map, identify the proposed area, and then go back and give them the total amount of households that are in that area, and then break it down for them and say, okay, out of this proposed area, you need to have 75% of this
So it's
total household.
households.
Exactly. and
Okay,
it's
not
one
residents or property owners, but households,
Yes,
which is
it's one
completely different.
signature per property.
Okay, so I think that probably needs to be clarified then, because residents and property owners are different than households. You could have 25 people in one house, but if it's one household, that's one.
Yes.
So-
So it's one signature per property.
Okay. I think that would be more clear if it read that way.
Okay, I can make that change.
And then also, now garage parking, if we could go back to that slide. So identify alternatives to public parking such as the following: driveway parking, garage parking. So what about garage parking are you going to be looking into specifically?
The only question that we would ask is, are you using your garage for parking? If they say yes, then it'll be a yes. If they say no, it will be a no. We're
And
not
what would
going to
the
ask
difference
any.
be if they say no?
Well, that would be eliminating either 2 spaces to park or 1. And that would be part of the total survey.
Okay.
So we would go into a property and say, you have a 2-car garage. And when I say go onto a property, it's just assessing it on the surface. It's not doing anything else, no inspection, none of that. It would just be a superficial assessment of the property. If we go to a property and you have a 2-car garage and a driveway where you fit 3 cars, we would say, technically, you can fit 5 cars on your property. So we would take that into account. And is that being utilized as parking space, or is it just storage?
Okay. And I think that was it. You answered the question on the 75%, so that eliminated my other question. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Madam Mayor? I have a couple of questions, Adriana. Mine has to do with the garage parking also, but in a little more detail. And you partially answered my question, but I wonder how this is going to play into it, which is that eliminates that many parking spaces. However, from a street view, which is what you say you're going to do, and there's a 2-car garage, at what point do you take into account, or is it going to be totally dismissed, things like the converted garages that are grandfathered in by law, or garages that may appear like to be a single car garage, but let's say that's the only place where somebody has that they hook up their washer and their dryer, and so there's no room for a car. I mean, shouldn't it be usable garages instead of just a flat across? Because we do have the law that grandfathers in the conversions, which would eliminate that. And then there's some single family garages that there's no place else where somebody can house their washer or their dryer or water softener or whatever. So are those things taken into consideration? If not, how can we?
Yes, and the way we're doing this is it's an overall area. So if we have those properties that do have those garages that are being utilized for something else, then it's not really going to affect the overall survey results. Now, if it's every home, then we'll have to take into account the other factors. How long is their driveway? Are they using their driveway? Unfortunately, we've come across people that use their garage for storage, and they also use their driveways to store inoperable vehicles. So that in itself, those are some of the factors that we want to look at. Just because they're using their garage for, let's just say, their washer and dryer, it's not really going to sway us one way or the other because it's just one property or 2 properties. It would be an overall totality of the proposed area.
But you're not necessarily, I understand what you're saying, but I'm going to take, for an example, my neighborhood, where I would say 40% of the properties there have garage conversions. So it's not that single thing. So would it be advantageous or in some way to filter through that by adding that to the survey? Like, if you have a garage, is it being utilized for parking? If no, explain. You know, maybe something like that, so that you know then how to weigh that one.
Absolutely,
I
we
agree
can
that
add
maybe in most circumstances it's not a factor. Fortunately, we haven't had to ask for permit parking at this time, but I know that you would run into a high percentage of garage conversions in my area.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why we just wanted to ask a yes or no and get a yes or no answer, because we don't want residents to think that we're prying into what they're actually using their garage at because they submitted an application for resident permit parking. And
I
that's what we're
understand.
afraid of.
And I thought about that too. I thought, well, most people are going to be reluctant to say I'm using it to live in, but at the same time, you can't evaluate it fairly. So if they choose to not fill it in, they don't have to, but then that's going to be
Correct.
part of your consideration of what you do. But if I want you to consider that I have a legal converted garage, then I want
Then
you to
you would
consider it.
identify it.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking that that might be helpful, something to weigh, because I know we have those issues in the city. The second question I had was, I think it's on the initial screening process. I'm sorry, let me grab my glasses here, so. Says the proposed area must consist primarily of single-family residential homes and/or duplex residential units. Now, that's for initial consideration. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so I know that the lady that was here last time, and then I've gotten a phone call from her since, her neighborhood is primarily multifamily. It's a lot of condominiums and apartment buildings, and there's this little tiny segment of single-family residential homes left.
Right.
So on the face of that, if I understand this correctly, she would be excluded because she's not going to qualify, right?
It just depends on what the proposed area would be. So like, let's say, for example, we have Calles Las Brisas, which is a cul-de-sac in the middle of a lot of multi-purpose homes. That would be something that we would consider is just, is it a cul-de-sac among all these residential areas?
Oh, okay.
So then we would take that into account.
Okay, so neighborhood can apply to as little as 4 homes.
If it's in a cul-de-sac and how it
Cul-de-sac
would be
area.
affected by outside businesses, educational institutions, things of that nature, so
And
yes.
can you foresee any other issue other than cul-de-sacs? And I'm just thinking along the lines that single-family homes, those that would tend, I think, to have the greatest impact are those that are surrounded by multi-family units. I mean, when you have a whole bunch of apartments or a whole bunch of condominiums, that's a lot when the overflow parking starts to have a problem. So would it only be in cul-de-sac situations, or could it be if you have a row of 4 houses on a street and then the rest of the street is condos or apartment buildings?
It could be that, it could be that, and
So
I think,
basically, you'll take into consideration the limited amount of residential parking, single-family residents that occupy that street and that they're surrounded by multifamily dwellings. It can be part of the consideration.
yes, and one of the reasons why we're proposing this through a resolution is that if we come across something that we didn't even think about, then it would be easier to come back and propose or present it to you for a change.
Okay. So on the way that this is worded here in the resolution, do you not think that that requires a little bit of clarity then, or, or special consideration or unique situations, just so somebody doesn't look at that and go, oh, I'm not going to qualify. I'm surrounded by condos and duplexes. We're not a single-family neighborhood.
Right. And I think that's why we kind of stayed away from specifically identifying what a neighborhood is. And that's where we would sit down and look at the proposed area and say, okay, this is, and that's why I believe that we made it very friendly, applicant friendly, because the staff would sit down with them and explain to them, okay, this is what we think should be the
Right,
proposed
because you're
area.
making the designation up front of the maps and what's an area, so they're going to know that information directly from staff initially.
Correct.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just one. How did you come up with 75%?
That was based on the survey that we conducted of 23 cities across the board. That was the 75% was the threshold.
So that's the norm.
Yes.
Thank you, Adriana.
I'll move the item.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Guillen,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hansen,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. Item 8, update on appeal by Ariana Gamino. May I have a staff report, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council. This next item also involves a subject that you reviewed at the November 6th council meeting. It was an appeal of a development review board decision about matching roof tile on San Luis Street, if you recall. We did meet with the property owner and were able to come up with an agreement for a new roofing type of material that looks quite a bit like tile, but is much less expensive and lighter than tile. So as a result, the resident dropped her appeal, but we still need to report back to you. And here's Kevin to give you more information. Kevin?
Yes, thank you, John. Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. As John mentioned, this item is a continued appeal by Ariana Gamino of a Development Review Board requirement to replace the asphalt composition shingle roof of an existing front unit with decorative tile as a condition of approval to construct a two-story addition to the existing one-story rear unit at 7028 San Luis Street. This property is in the R2 medium-density residential zone. The DRB originally considered this project at its August meeting and determined that the roof of both the existing and the proposed additions should be provided with decorative tile roofing material for aesthetic consistency. Based on this decision, the applicant submitted a formal written appeal to the City Council in September. Again, the applicant objected to the re-roofing of the front unit with decorative tile due to cost considerations. The City Council considered this appeal at its November 6th meeting and heard testimony from the applicant's representatives. The City Council discussed this matter at length and decided to continue the item and directed staff to explore other options for resolving this issue with the applicant. Per the City Council's direction, staff did discuss various project alternatives with the applicant, and we were able to reach an agreement. The applicant has agreed to re-roof the front unit with a lightweight tile roofing material that's similar in design and color to the regular tile roof, which will be installed on the rear unit. Staff believes that this is a good compromise, as tile, although it's lightweight, will still be used for the project. Using lightweight tile also has several benefits to the applicant. Again, it will reduce the cost of the material. It is more durable, and it will not require structural reinforcements to the existing roof. The agreement will also benefit the city and this particular neighborhood, as it'll ensure visual consistency between the new and the existing structures. So as a result of the agreement, the applicant has submitted a request to withdraw the appeal, and as such, it's recommended that the City Council receive and file this report and accept the applicant's request to withdraw the appeal. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
My question would be, are we going to incorporate, or does it already become inclusive because it's a form of lightweight tile, this into our, design standards?
Yeah, so this particular type of tile, it's already a type of material that we approve.
It would be acceptable already?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
it's acceptable.
And so it doesn't really look any difference, it's just a weight issue?
It's not exactly the same from what I've seen, but it is very similar in terms of the style, the design, as well as the color.
That's good news.
That is good news. I'm glad we were able to support this resident. Very good news. May I have a receive and
Make a
file,
motion
please?
to receive and file this report.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Guillen,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hansen,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. Item 9, the fiscal year 2018 comprehensive annual financial report. Staff report, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor, Council. The next item is review of our 2018 financial report. The report is called the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or as we like to call it, our CAFR. And as you saw earlier, we won the award for our 2017, the previous year's report. Similar last year and the several years past, in 2018, we received a clean bill of health from our auditors, and they told us we're doing all the right things with our financial books. While we're not posting record surpluses, as we did back in the days of redevelopment, we are paying our bills. And we're doing this without dipping into our savings account, what we refer to as our reserve fund. And in fact, what you'll see tonight, we are able to put away a little bit of money still in our reserve fund. So as you mentioned earlier in your presentation, Madam Mayor, huge kudos goes out to Karina and her staff for keeping things in order. So here's Karina Lamb, our Finance Director, to handle the item. Karina?
Thank you, John. Madam Mayor and members of the council, it's my pleasure to present to you the comprehensive annual financial report for fiscal year 2018. As you know, other than the budget, this EM report is one of the major duties that the finance department handles every year. This report captures the finances for the entire city, including the water funds, assessor agency, and component units such as the Housing Authority. The CAFR is a great tool to compare actuals with budget estimates, which our auditors look at it very closely during the audit to ensure that the EM figures are matching up with what the council had intended at budget time. And leading up to the completion of the CAFR, there are a number of tasks that we do, including implementation of new accounting standards. For example, in fiscal year 18, we implemented GASB 75 for financial reporting related to other post-employment benefits, so-called OPEB. This new GASB 75, along with other standards which we implemented before, provides a better overview for our post-employment benefits. Later in the presentation, I'll go through the long-term liabilities related to these standards. In addition to the numbers, our independent auditors, Favnik, Tri, and Day, on an annual basis, examine our internal controls and also make sure that our financial is presented fairly in all material matters. As we have in the past, we're very happy to report that we have received a clean opinion from our audit firm for fiscal year 18. This will also allow us to once again apply for the National GFOA Award. As part of our day-to-day operation, we always follow the industry best practices. We have policy and procedures in place for separation of duties, approval authority, review and approval processes, and documentations. We also do self-evaluation in an effort to continue strengthening our internal controls in response to environments, technology, or regulatory changes. As you know, having a sound internal control system is critical in any operations. It is a great tool for effective fraud prevention. Given that we have been hearing from the news related to the scandals from other government agencies, in fiscal year 17, we initiated a separate audit procedure called Agree Upon Procedures to review all electronic transactions such as wires. In fiscal year 2018, we initiated another Agree Upon Procedure review by our independent auditors. The Agree Upon Procedure is totally optional. We initiated this to make sure we're in the right track. It took up, of course, a lot more time than usual audit. However, we look for our auditors to give us guidance and independent and objective review on certain areas of our operations. They selected cash disbursements as review for this engagement in fiscal year 18. So what are the examples of cash disbursement? What does that mean when we receive a clean bill of health from our auditors? When a check request is turned into finance for payment, finance staff verifies account codings to make sure that the coding is correct and the items have been budgeted. We also verify whether the purchasing policy and a two-person approval process have been followed. Additionally, we also verify the signatures of authorized staff members only. We also verify if the vendors have turned in their W-9 forms for tax reporting purposes. Now, it gets even more in-depth when it's grant-related. We also review and make sure expenditures are eligible for grant purposes. During the Agree Upon Procedures, our auditors this year also review all the check sequence to ensure that checks and wires are all accounted for and have been approved by the City Council as part of the Register of Demands. Similar to last year, we are happy to report that no problems were found by the auditors in the cash disbursement area, and no changes are needed at this time. I don't mean to say we are perfect. I don't mean to say we have a foolproof system. However, given the small staff that we have, we really have tried our best to have the controls and separation of duties in place. As you can see that our efforts have really been paid off. And we do not plan to stop here. Our finance, as well as all departments, we are committed to continue meeting the high standards and continue to look for ways to maintain the integrity of our operations. Next, I want to touch on the financials. City revenues is separated in three major fund categories. The biggest revenue source is the general fund, approximately $26.7 million total in fiscal year 18. This is a fund where the council has the most discretion in spending. It comprises of various sources. Consistently, the most significant source of income is sales tax, followed by motor vehicle license fees, utility users tax, franchise fees, and property tax. In the restricted fund category, as its name stated, this fund can only be used for specific purposes. Some of our major restricted funds are CDBG and home funds, transportation funds, and STAR after-school grants. The amount we receive, they do change from year to year. Overall, in fiscal year 18, we receive about $10.5 million. Lastly, our water fund, the total revenue is about $8 million, about 2% increase in total revenues when we compare to last fiscal year. We do see a slight increase in water consumption since the drought. However, there was a significant increase in operational costs, which creates a deficit in the year. We will go through that in the water fund section later in the presentation. Here's our revenue trend for the past 10 years. The light blue represents the general fund and the darker blue represents the restricted funds. In fiscal year 18, we had about $37 million total in the general fund and restricted funds combined. The general fund has a slight increase when compared to the previous years. The increase reflects increases in sales tax, MVLF, property tax, franchise tax, etc. Since the passage of Measure P for utility users tax, we did see an increase in total revenue. However, the disappointing fact is that the tax is inconsistent and is variable from year to year. Also, the increase does not fill the gap for the loss of redevelopment agency. On the restricted fund category, we received about $10 million in the year, which is slightly higher than the previous year. And as I said earlier, the biggest revenue source in the general fund is sales tax. We receive about $7.7 million total in the year. This represents a slight increase when compared to the previous year. As you know, our sales tax rely on a few categories, particularly on fuels. As fuel prices went up a little recently and consumption remained stable, it impacted the total sales tax and we went up a little bit. All in all, the $7.3 million is a good level. When we look at the 10-year trend, however, it shows very slow growth in our local economy. We now have exceeded the 2008 pre-recession level, and we surely hope that the upward trend will continue. This 10-year expenditure trend reflects the normal operating expenses as well as the use of funds from prior years or one-time grants. In fiscal year 18, we expended approximately $35 million when all funds combined, which is consistent with prior years. The high expenditure in fiscal year 16 represents some CIP projects, also a land development for restaurant sites. Also want to point out the high spike in fiscal year 13. The high expenditures were related to projects funded by grants, including the Salute Park construction and the senior housing projects. And among our operating departments, we expended close to $32 million in the year. We consistently spend the most resources on public safety. The 37% includes the sheriff's contract. This is a pie chart for fiscal improvements, our capital improvement projects. As you recall, our former redevelopment agency funded significant projects in the past, and the annual $5 million funding has vanished since the dissolution of the redevelopment agency. So using other restricted sources, such as the transportation grant, Measure M and R, is becoming our norm to do infrastructure improvements. So in this current year, we'll be able to use some SB1 gas tax dollars as well for our streets projects. Overall, in fiscal year 18, we still expanded over $3 million in CIPs, and as we do every year, we continue improving our streets and sidewalk and our maintenance and improvements at City Park and facilities. As far as water improvements, after the drilling of a new well, which was funded by the former redevelopment agency's bond proceeds, we are completing the design of the well and will be ready to go out to bid for the construction of the well this spring. Having one more water well will help us come closer to being self-sufficient and not relying on imported water. And ultimately, it will help lower the total water production cost. After we review our current year's expenditure, here's a summary of the long-term liabilities. This table includes liabilities such as capital leases, employee leave, other post-employment benefits, so-called OPEB, which is health benefits for us, pensions, and other notes payable. As required by accounting standards, these items were always reported to you in the past, either in the statement or footnotes. The reason I'm highlighting this tonight is because there is some change in accounting standard that I want to bring to your attention. Before we review the specifics, you can look at these liabilities like your mortgage. There is no immediate demand for paying this off right away. You could make payments every month, and ultimately your mortgage will be paid off. This would be the case here for these liabilities. Similar to other agencies in fiscal year 18, you'll see that the two biggest liabilities are pension and OPEB related. Not only we have been diligent in making the required payment obligation for both pension and OPEB, We were able to pay down the unfunded liability for pension in fiscal year 18 and continue to contribute to a healthcare trust for future medical liability. This is a solid approach to address these liabilities. As for net OPEB liability, that seems to have a big jump in fiscal year 18. The total is about $12 million. The increase was related to an implementation of a new accounting standard that I mentioned earlier. The liability was reported in the footnotes as required by a previous accounting standard. However, recently an updated standard was implemented, and now everyone is required to show the numbers in our financial statements. Now, if you recall, similar to this, what we did was the pension last year, and we also implemented a new GASB last year for pension. As for net pension liability, the total in fiscal year 18 has gone up to $23 million due to changes to CalPERS assumption policy and investment earnings. You may recall we made over $700,000 in general fund for extra payments to CalPERS in fiscal year 18. This has not been reflected in the balance here because CalPERS actuary data is 2 years behind, but we'll see it reflected in the future balance. The long-term balances here for pension and OPEB are updated based on the annual valuation performed by professional actuary every year. The reason for the annual update is because assumptions change constantly, such as the number of retirees, age, investment earnings, mortality rates, etc. And therefore, valuation is needed on a regular basis. Subsequently, it changes the balance reflected on our financials. Lastly, I want to draw your attention to the notes payable. The increase of $6.5 million here was all related to the loan that we obtained from the iBank for the construction of the new water well number 16. Here's a breakdown of our reserves within the general fund as of fiscal year 18. You can create this reserve as your savings account at home. We were able to keep the PERS reserve the same in the year after contributing $700,000 to PERS to pay down the unfunded liabilities. As for capital improvement projects reserve, we were able to add $460,000 to it for future CIP projects. This CIP reserve, along with other restricted grants, have become great refunding resources to pay for annual CIP projects after we lost the redevelopment agency. Lastly, we posted a surplus, about $91,000. You can see that the surplus, the reserve now has gone up to $12.7 million. This is a general fund reserve in a 10-year trend. This is the unassigned portion, money we save up in the bank. Having worked here for over 20 years, I really see the council is committed to keeping this reserve at a healthy level. As you can see, we only used it once in the past 10 years. A very small portion of the reserve back in 2010 was authorized to use because of the recession. However, the bulk was used toward an early payment we made to the Joint Power Insurance Authority to take advantage of a discount offered for our prepayments. While this reserve is at a healthy level, it could fund close to 40 to 50% of our city operations. In a case of an emergency where we're not getting funding from the state, or in a case where we lost our redevelopment agency back in 2012 and we lost $5 to $6 million a year in revenues, or in the events we lost a major business in town, this reserve will help sustain us a little while in those situations. Lastly, for water fund, we posted a deficit about $522,000 with a fund balance of $2.8 million in fiscal year 18. We did see the water consumption has gone up back a little bit, so people have been using more water. However, as consumption goes up, so does the cost of production. In fiscal year 18, we were not able to lease water rights in a year, which is a cheaper way to function, and therefore had to purchase more portable water in the year. Also, with the implementation of new accounting standards for OPEB, there were more expenses in a year, which caused this deficit. We're in the middle of a water rate study, and we hope to wrap this up in the next few months in addressing the deficits. Historically, it's always been our council's desire to keep our water rates low. As you can see in our annual survey, our rates have always been one of the lowest in the region. We know the council's desire, and we are very sensitive to that, and we'll certainly bring back the study results to the council for review. Also, as I mentioned earlier about the new well number 16, once the new well is up and running, our reliance on potable water will be reduced, which will help lower our overall production costs in the future. With that, this wraps up my presentation. It is recommended that the council receive and file the fiscal year 18's financial report. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
I don't have a question, but I have a couple comments, if I may, Madam Mayor. I just want to thank you, Karina and Clyde, and your whole department for the wonderful job that you do. After, reading in the Times about what happened in Linwood, it makes us all the more aware of how important it is for us to be fiscally responsible and to live within our means. And if you cap that off with receiving awards for the great books that you keep and the investments that you make and the leadership, that you provided to our community, I don't think that I was ever more proud of that back when we lost the redevelopment funds and everybody around us was doing massive layoffs and cutting programs and services, and we were able to get through that entire event without being able, having to do that or cut the programs and services to our residents. It really shows the wisdom of your department and the fellow council members up here who so wisely approve budgets that make sense and keep Paramount within its means. So I just want to thank you and your department and for staying on top of this and keeping us out of the news.
Yes.
Thank you, Karina.
Make
Okay,
a motion we receive and file?
Second.
roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hanson,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. Item 10, authorization to purchase and install catch basin connector pipe screen inserts. Staff report, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor, this next item is a short one. It involves our efforts to comply with stormwater discharge laws. Local governments in our region, as you know, are required to put measures in place that help to clean stormwater before it goes into the LA River and then out to the ocean. One such measure that cities are taking is the installation of these specialized screens that you'll see a picture of soon here inside the catch basins that capture the debris that goes through with the stormwater. So we've been doing this for a number of years now. So here's Adriana Figueroa to tell us about the latest. Adriana?
Thank you, John. Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, as part of the fiscal year 2019 budget, funds were allocated for the purchase and installation of catch basin connector pipe screen inserts, or also known as CPS units. I have a picture here so you can see what they look like. A CPS unit is essentially a metal screen assembly that is installed inside of an existing catch basin in order to prevent debris from entering the storm drain system. We have already installed 66 of these units, and the recommendation tonight is to install an additional 29 CPS units for a total of $36,555, as was budgeted for this year. That essentially concludes my report, but I'll be able to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Adriana?
Just one, Madam Mayor. How many, do we know how many we have left to do?
We probably have about 80 or so more to do, yes. But we're trying to phase them in.
Right.
And obviously, we're going to be going after funding. And as the funding becomes available, we will be
I know we've
putting
been
those in.
at this for a number of years. Do you know how many actually?
We've
years?
actually already done quite a few. And the city of Paramount, we were very fortunate. Some years ago, we were one of the recipients of a $10 million grant in the basin, in the entire region, that allowed for installation of these devices in several cities within the Gateway community, the Gateway cities.
Right.
And so we took advantage of that, and we installed, I believe, 337 units back then. But all of that was grant funded.
Right. Thank you. They're very effective.
Thank you.
Motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hanson,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. Item 11, litter abatement program. Staff report, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Recently, a couple of council members have brought to my attention that they've noticed a little uptick in litter throughout the community. As you're about to hear, we do quite a bit currently to keep the community clean and litter-free, but even after all these efforts, we still are seeing some litter out there on the streets and sidewalks and landscape areas. However, we're not giving up. In fact, we're coming up with improved ways to attack this problem. So tonight, we'll give you a comprehensive review first of the current litter abatement programs. Then we'll give you some recommendations of how we can enhance these current efforts. So with that, I'll turn it over to our Public Works Director, Adriana Figueroa, to handle this item. Adriana?
Thank you, John. Madam Mayor, members of the council. For decades, the City Council has made it a priority to enhance the aesthetics of Paramount, as it is critical in maintaining the quality of life for residents as well as advancing economic development. Given this, a variety of programs have been implemented throughout the years in order to keep trash and litter away from the public right-of-way. However, even with these programs in place, we are aware of the increase in litter throughout our community. This report will present a comprehensive review of the city's litter abatement program and offer potential enhancement options for the City Council to consider, funding permitted, of course. With regards to street sweeping, we sweep our streets once a week. These are on neighborhood streets, so these are the local streets and alleys. They are done once a week. And for some of our major boulevards, those are done twice a week, and that would be Paramount, Rosecrans, Downey, and a small portion of Alondra. As indicated in my previous report, many of our catch basins have been retrofitted with trash excluders designed to collect trash from the street before it enters the storm drain system, and these are cleaned monthly. There are approximately 136 trash containers placed on major boulevards and other frequently traveled areas. These trash cans are serviced by the city's solid waste hauler, CalMet, twice per week. Our public works staff are assigned daily park duties that include weekdays and weekends. Among other duties, they are also required to pick up trash and change out the trash can liners at all park receptacles. The city's landscape maintenance contractor, Brightview, is responsible for picking up trash along the medians when they are out mowing or weeding. Grass medians are mowed weekly, and drought-tolerant medians are maintained every other week. A public works staff member is assigned to each major boulevard to survey daily. They are looking for potential sources of litter and other maintenance issues, such as illegal signs on poles, abandoned shopping carts, graffiti, large bulky items, among others. They remove signs and pick up what they can. Large items that are unable to be picked up are reported to the large item program. City staff and CalMet work jointly to get these items removed. Residents are encouraged to utilize the existing large item program through CalMet, as this is a free program for single-family homes. In addition to the regularly assigned duties and responsibilities, public works staff are assigned a grid area on a weekly basis for spot inspections. And from these grid assignments and regular calls for service from the community, staff identifies areas that require additional litter removal. Public works staff is then assigned to these areas on a weekly basis to remove the litter. With regards to enforcement, there are a few codes that relate to litter enforcement. However, enforcement of these codes is seldom used due to the lower priority nature of these offenses when compared to others. It is also difficult to cite for these violations, given that the offense must be witnessed by an officer. The first one listed is the Paramount Municipal Code, Section 48-3.3, which prohibits litter and allows for administrative citations to be issued. Given that the penalty for these offenses are $100 for the first offense, $200 for the second, and $500 for the third and subsequent offense, it is recommended that the issuance of these violations be given by a sheriff deputy. The next two sections relate to the LA County Code, California Vehicle Code, and California Penal Code. These violations also have to be visualized by an officer, and the officer may issue a notice to appear in court. However, as with similar cases, given the lower nature of these offenses, the court system would likely not file these citations, and this has the potential to discourage sheriff deputies from issuing these notices. This may create also inconsistencies in the issuance of these citations. With regards to the recommended enhancement options, I have listed several phases. Phase one, let me go back. In light of the city's current litter abatement practices and limited enforcement options, staff has prepared a list of options to consider in order to embark on a more comprehensive approach to mitigating litter within our community. These recommended options have been broken down into 4 phases for implementation purposes. Phase 1 would commence in the spring of 2019, and with funding permitted, we would kick off a litter abatement public information campaign similar to the Don't Be a Litter Bug campaign that you may have seen. And this would include appropriate signage throughout the city indicating what the fines are for littering. We would also install additional trash cans in high pedestrian traffic areas. And the cost for these is approximately $16,000 and will be brought to council during the mid-year budget review. These trash cans would be serviced by CalMed at no additional charge, as described in the city's franchise agreement. And also, as part of this phase, we will expand the current Pitch-In Paramount program to include litter abatement on major boulevards. Phase 2 would commence in the fall of 2019. Litter is also found on private parking lots from commercial establishments and often gets blown onto our streets. Since this is not only a nuisance but also a stormwater quality issue, staff would like to explore the development of a specific program designed to enhance litter abatement efforts by our commercial establishments. Phase 3 would commence in the spring of 2020, and once funding from the LA County Stormwater Fee is secured for this purpose. We would add an additional day of street sweeping on the rest of the city's major streets. This would cost approximately an additional $25,000 annually, and staff will need to review and consider any parking impacts this may have. Also, as part of this phase, we would hire additional contract services to specifically address litter abatement, and this could cost about $18,000 annually. Phase 4 would be implemented once phases 1 through 3 have been established and evaluated as to their effectiveness. This includes exploring the possibility of an adopt a road or adopt a street type program, and we would need to evaluate the pros and cons to this program, as well as their effectiveness in other communities within Southern California. At this time, it is recommended that the City Council approve staff's recommendation to implement phases 1 through 3 of the litter abatement program, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Any questions for Adriana?
I have one question, Adriana. I'm one of the persons that had complained about the litter in the city. So my only concern with, I think what you have planned, it looks really good, but the alleyways, that there are furniture that gets dumped, trash, and it takes way too long. It's not really an individual person that can call CalMet and say, I have a large item pickup. I'd like to see the alleys. There's one that I constantly get calls on near Vermont and Jackson. There's one to the rear of the 1500 block of Paramount Boulevard. There are several alleys within the city, and I have more, I just can't think of them right now, that there are always large items dumped there. And so those alleys, and not just those, but other ones, really need some additional attention, yeah. So if we could implement that in with it, I think that would be really helpful, because we can't rely on persons to say, hey, I have a big item pickup, when they're just getting dumped in alleys and they're just being illegally dumped.
And what happens a lot of times, as you mentioned, is one person may leave an item and it attracts other items. And so you have other people dumping at the same location. So we need to try to address that as soon as possible.
Right, so can we implement the alleyways that,
We can look into
without
that,
having to have
Yeah.
the phone call placed? Maybe
Yeah.
some type of city, drive, like, let's say a public works vehicle drive through the alley. If they see it, they report it.
Yes.
They can't pick it up.
I'm sorry, if I may interject, I'm pretty sure we still have our hotspot areas that we check on a weekly, daily basis. So we could definitely add, if you have a list of locations, we could definitely add those to the hotspot checks that we do.
Right, John, because just like the post office parking lot that I was
you brought to our
constantly getting
we
those.
cleaned that up. We added a trash can there, and that's been on our radar. We even met with a new postal, I guess postmaster you want to call them, and they've agreed to keep watching it, clean it up more often. But we do have our park guy from Salute Park that does go across the street, and he does take care of that as well. So yeah, those are hotspots. But yeah, definitely we could add to our hotspot locations. We can add those alleyways.
Absolutely. If you can send me that information, I'll be more than happy to put it in that hotspot grid
great.
area.
And did you mention in your report, Adriana, that Public Works staff is assigned certain areas of the city?
That's correct.
Okay, so that will be beneficial as well.
Right.
Okay, thank
I have
you.
one question, Madam Mayor. When I often call in, myself, large items that are in alleyways. I know this has been an ongoing problem forever that we really have not solved. Does it have to be from the city or from council members for the dumping in the alleyways? Can residents call when there's stuff in the alleyways, large item stuff? Instead of, I'm not talking about like we have, the program in the city where if you want to put out a large item, you have to call at least 24 hours in advance. I'm just talking about they drive by, they see stuff. Can everyday residents report those items to CalMet? I know that they can call Public Works and then you turn around and call CalMet, because I know I do it now as a council member. But is that a process that's already in place?
They can call it in to CalMet. My understanding, though, is they probably have to call it by a specific day so that it can get picked up that week.
Right.
And so they absolutely can call it into CalMet.
Well, and that's part of the residential program where you have to
Correct.
report it if you're going to set it out, but I'm talking about the illegal dumping.
We'll check with CalMet on that to see if they have that in place, because they do pick up large items on our behalf
I
when
know
they are
they do,
called in.
and we
So,
usually call.
Yeah,
So
that's a good question.
My thought process would be, that, like has Councilmember Gillen talked about, we see this all the time. It's been an ongoing problem forever. We've implemented several things. But I was just thinking when she was saying that, we call in all the time, but can the residents call in? And even
We'll find
if
out.
it's that they call Public Works or they call directly to CalMet, I was thinking maybe we should post signs.
Like in the entrances to alleyways.
Yeah, you see illegal, it's, figure out the wording, because,
Yeah.
they're not gonna see them illegally dumped, but see, large items that need to be cleaned up,
Sure.
call this
yeah.
number.
That's a good
And
idea.
then maybe even add that to the Paramount Works app. If it's something that they can call in directly to CalMet, that would be great to have to eliminate the staff turning around
And going
doing
around,
it and
yeah,
putting,
absolutely.
somebody else in between. But, most people, I don't think, would be aware, because I'm not even as a council member, can I call directly to CalMet and get
Yeah.
that done? Because I usually call Public Works
Right.
and have it taken
Sure.
care of. But if we could all be part of the solution in getting it done sooner, if we can find out if they can report
Absolutely.
that directly to them and let them, be aware of it, then we can help out, the staff that's doing the hot patrol stuff. Because for some reason, we seem to see it 10 times sooner than most of the staff does.
We're trying, we're out there.
No, I know that.
I know,
That's
I
what
know.
I'm saying. You've
Yeah.
got jobs, you're
And
little,
it's-
and there are neighborhoods, and we're
Right.
driving through them every
Absolutely.
day.
And
so-
it's every city is battling with this. LA it's out of control there
Right.
in LA, and but we do see it here, and we do see it in other cities. So we're
We already
yeah,
have the deal with
we do.
CalMet, which
Right.
other cities don't, so it's just a matter
Sure.
of, will they let the residents
Absolutely.
report it? And they have, the large item pickup line now specifically dedicated to that. So maybe, those calls could go into that
Directly
same
there.
line, or if they have one, for immediate reporting of a large item.
Sure.
That's, if you're not, it's not in front of a residence, but a dumping site, some way the language can be worked out, but if we could, have a direct impact, just like we do on graffiti.
Right.
We have our Heartline number, we directly take the photograph, we send it, I use my Paramount Work apps all the time
Sure.
for that, and, report it that way, that would be great, where we can,
We'll look
but
at
a
it.
sign
Absolutely.
might be good to say.
And the entrances to the alleyways, yeah.
If I may, council
I'll
member,
participate.
I'm sorry, if I may. Part of the kickoff campaign for litter abatement is going to include all of that information, and we will be providing the community with all of the options that they have to get rid of items that they
Right.
need to get rid of. And so we certainly would look into that.
Yeah, I think that's great. And like I said, a permanent sign with a nice large phone number there, that, because we all like, oh, who am I supposed to call? And it's nice when you know right then, until we ingrain that in people. I know we've talked a lot about at the ad hoc level because of the school's experience and so much of it back when we were young. And, don't be a litter bug campaign,
give a
we all
hoot,
went
don't
through
pollute.
that, and it used to have a big impact, because you used to feel really guilty about it. And it's funny, once that went away after a number of years, littering is back. I watched people all the time. There was a trash can on the corner by the chamber, 3 feet, and they'd drop it right in front of my door, and 2 feet further was a trash can, and there were a lot of times the same people that walked it over and over. So it's just out of the conscience of, the public anymore, and I think, we have to do something to bring that back.
May I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hanson,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. Item 12, as mayor of the city, I'll make a motion to appoint Jaime Lopez to the Planning Commission expiring April 2021. May I have a second?
Second?
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hanson,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. Is Mr. Lopez in the audience?
No, he's taking a final tonight, so he
Okay,
wasn't
thank
able to
you.
make it.
Okay, item 13, Farmers Market Agreement with Hunger Action Los Angeles. Staff report, please.
Yes, Madam Mayor and Council, last month you approved an agreement for the weekly daytime farmers market at Progress Park, and that's going to be starting up in March. At that time, we informed you that we'd like to try out an evening farmers market that would be more of a social gathering event than just strictly a market, and we want to try that once a month. The evening market would include the typical stuff that you see at a farmer's market, but also have an entertainment component. So by introducing new events like this, we're hoping to continue to enhance the quality of life for our residents and really bond the community together. So with that, I will hand it over to our Parks and Rec Director, Dave Johnson, to handle the item. Dave?
Thank you, John, Mayor, council members. So just for clarity, we want to make sure that you understand that this is not the weekly farmers market that council approved that will happen at Progress Park on Fridays. That one is now geared up to start April 5th, 2019. This is, an evening farmers market. It will be in our downtown area. It is planned for once a month. We're looking for that first Friday of each month, so it kind of gives it a nice little ring to it, the first Fridays. The operational time of the market itself would be between 5 and 9 p.m. They would have 2 hours prior to and 2 hours afterwards for setup and breakdown. City staff would be on hand to go ahead and set up the street closures at 2 p.m. to allow the market to get settled. And again, as John mentioned, this is, it will be a farmer's market. There will be produce vendors. There'll be craft vendors. And there is a larger emphasis for this vendor to bring food trucks out and to provide entertainment to make it a destination entry so folks from our community can experience an evening market, make it a very social aspect to it, invite members of, we'll have people from the other communities come and visit our downtown to see what vendors we have in our new downtown. We also will be inviting our local businesses in the downtown area to, if they want to have a booth, they can be a part of it. So again, we're looking for a real social destination that our community can enjoy. So the agreement before you tonight is with the Hunger Action LA. They are one of the originators of farmers market in this area. They've been doing it for 35 years, and they're very experienced working with communities similar to Paramount. They are looking to start this market on March 1st, 2019. The location would be in downtown Paramount. It would be on Jackson Street between Paramount Boulevard and Vermont, and that's the area that we would close. The start date and location, I'm sorry, this is a continuation of start date and location. The reason we chose this area, and the vendor likes it, it has a lot of adjacent parking. So we have City Hall parking, hospital parking, we have the retail complex parking, so there's a lot of access to this area. It is highly visible from Paramount Boulevard. It will be highly visible for people attending the event to see our downtown markets or downtown retailers. It is close to a city facility for storage of equipment that will be needed to run the market. It has walking accessibility to local residents in the area, and then it has a public transit nearby. So this is the proposed location. Again, Paramount Boulevard is to your far right. Vermont is to your far left, and that is Jackson Street in the middle. So this is the proposed location of the event in terms of where we would hope to position the food trucks, the vendors in those green booths, an area for people to lounge and eat their food, and there will be a stage in which they'll be providing monthly entertainment. We'll be working with the businesses that are affected and making sure that everything is that works for them in the best way possible, because this will be a monthly closure of that downtown section of Jackson Street. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, but we're looking to have council approve this agreement.
I like the hours, David. It gives me an opportunity to go and shop 5 till 9, and the residents that are working, they're able to come and enjoy and bring the community together, so I like the hours. Any other questions or comments for David?
I like the hours. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. I don't like the location. I know I'm the council member that constantly talks about air quality, But this area, when we leave a city council meeting, there's a heavy smell. And I just would hate to have a farmer's market be impacted by the smell that so many people smell when we leave here. A lot of people don't smell it because they're so used to it. I don't like the location just based on my knowledge of the area. I think it's a great program that you have suggested and put the time and effort into. However, I have to say, I'm not crazy about the location.
Any other comments, questions? May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian,
No.
Councilmember Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hanson,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. Okay, item 14, the classification study update. We will table that until
Yes.
2019.
That is correct.
Okay, may I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gian,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffmeyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hanson,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. Are there any comments from council members?
I would just like to say, great job to the staff for the Santa train and the breakfast with Santa and the Christmas tree lighting. You guys just did an amazing job. I think that you really made the 50th anniversary special with all of, the giveaways that you did. I am so jealous that you all challenged that extra cold weather on Thursday and went through the rain. I chickened out. I wasn't able to do that, but you just did an amazing, amazing job. And thank you very much for all your hard work. It certainly is appreciated by the residents.
As always, there was a beautiful Christmas spirit in the air. And as I rode the Christmas train, as I stood on stage for the tree lighting, and mingled with the children at the breakfast with Santa, it's just a beautiful spirit. And it was so nice to bring the community together and on a happy note, peaceful note. So thank you so much, David, for your leadership and all the recreation staff. I know all of you work behind the scenes, but you are much appreciated, and thank you so much.
So I would like to ditto what both council members said and our mayor. Awesome job. It was a lot of fun being out there. Couple things I'd like to mention. On Saturday, I was able to attend the Just Breathe Foundation for Rocio Guillen at Progress Park. She was a mother of two of my young cousins. She was killed in the Las Vegas massacre. So thank you for allowing my two young cousins to have the foundation at Progress Park, where Paramount Unified School District identified 25 needy families and 25 needy families from Lakewood. We're blessed with a catered breakfast and also a toy giveaway, so thank you for that. And then at Paramount Park, it was great to see the snow and all the kids having a good time. And then I just want to mention briefly the AQMD meeting, and Artie pretty much touched on that. He was a speaker tonight, and I have to just make one correction. He said Aniplex had been shut down 6 times. It was actually 7 times. And after listening to so many testimonies of community members with a lot of cancer in their family, at some point I would like to see if we can get a consensus to buy more monitors, because in speaking with AQMD, they said that was something that the city that they felt could do, or purchase more air monitors to go up. And I'd just like to say that we have purchased 5 in the past, and I think it was about $40,000. And with that being said, the Paramount signs, when you're entering in Paramount and exiting, and in different parts of the city, those signs are also $40,000. So I just like to say, I think our community health and the monitoring is worth an additional $40,000. And with that, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, and I'll see you next year.
Can I say something now? Okay. Also, kudos to Dave and your staff. You guys did an outstanding job, no doubt about it. It was fun on Friday. Didn't think we were going to make it, but we did, actually, so that was a good thing. Also, and mosquitoes, kind of a final report, you might say, for this year, in that they've calmed way down finally, and it was as far as West Nile virus is concerned, it was a much better year. There were, in our district, which goes clear to Simi Valley, it's a huge district, there were 32 cases of West Nile virus. As of this year, as of last year, there were 152, so it did calm down quite a bit. Unfortunately, there was one death in our district. As they're gearing up, they're starting to already start getting ready for the Aedes mosquitoes. They had an abundance of those. I know we spoke on those a few times, and that's kind of a nasty one too. Also, Karina, you guys and your department do an outstanding job, and we thank you. I didn't get a chance to say anything before, so I'm saying it now. Thank you very much. You guys all did a great job, and Merry Christmas to everybody in the staff and the audience and everybody else who's watching. We appreciate all of it. Thank you.
Very good. I'll just kind of just follow up on what everybody else said. I wish everybody in the audience a very, very blessed Christmas and a Happy New Year. And our staff and the people that lead this city, I think you do a phenomenal job, and you very much, and I hope you have a great holiday.
Mayor, I see you going for the gavel. I just have comments from staff. Just real quick, I want to introduce a new full-time employee. He's not new to us. As you recall, Giovanni Ballesteros, our former IT technician, he left us a few months ago. He took a job with LA County. Daniel Martinez, there he is. He was actually in the back running the AV show, or excuse me, the show for cable TV. Daniel Martinez has been working for us as a part-timer, as I mentioned, as an IT tech for over a year now. He applied for Gio's position and was the most qualified candidate. And Daniel has an A degree from Cerritos College, and his hobbies include camping, hiking, and working out. So please meet Daniel Martinez,
welcome,
the new Gio. And then Vice Mayor Hansen mentioned about the West Nile virus and the mosquitoes. We were pleasantly surprised to know that we were informed late last week that we're going to be recognized for our efforts to spread the word in our community about West Nile virus. And as a result, we've been invited to the LA County Board of Supervisors meeting next Tuesday, 12/18, and the mayor will be attending that to accept the award on behalf of the city. And so again, on behalf of the staff, have a very happy holiday season. And
Thank
that's
you,
it.
John. Thank you. At this time, I adjourn this meeting until January 8th, 2019. Okay, we'll go into the successor agency. May I have roll call of council members, please?
Councilmember Guillen. Here. Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
Here.
Councilmember Lemons.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hansen.
Here.
Mayor Martinez.
Here. Are there any public comments? Item 1, approval of minutes.
Move it.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Guillen. Yes. Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hansen.
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. Item 2, register of demands.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Guillen. Yes. Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
Yes.
Councilmember Lemons.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hansen.
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. At this time, I adjourn this meeting until January 8th, 2019. Merry Christmas, everyone. Enjoy.